What's up everybody, Kung here, and today I wanted to put together a video for talking about planning your defenses when you're theory crafting a character. And the purpose of this video is really to help give you the tools to help you know about what happens in Path of Exile, so that way when you're making your defensive plan, you can be as successful as possible. And so I first want to note who this video is for. If you're a brand new player to Path of Exile, there's a lot of great creators out there for brand new players. Ziggy D, Xenocide Genius, Pox, Noogie, Lifting Nerd Bro, and a ton of others that they have created a lot of content that's specifically for players where this is their first time encountering the game, or maybe they've only played once or twice. And so I'd encourage you to go seek out those resources. However, if you're a player who has played Path of Exile, but you've decided that you want to start making your own characters, or, well, I made this character but it's weak and I want to improve it, this video is for you. And so this is really the meat of this video, is what happens in PoE whenever enemies attack or they cast spells at you. What sort of happens through this chain of events and the way PoE processes this. So the first thing it does is it checks to see if you're actually hit by that spell or the attack. And this is where the first type of mechanics come into play. You can actually avoid being hit. And one of the mechanics that does this is evasion. But it's important to note that evasion applies only to attacks. But there's another way to avoid the hit, and this is the second mechanic called dodge. And depending upon the type of dodge that you can have spell dodge or attack dodge. And if you have spell dodge, it'll explicitly state it. If an item or passive just says dodge, it's assumed to be for attacks only. The second thing it does is it checks, well, if you get hit, are you able to avoid the damage associated with the hit? And the mechanic that is used to deal with this is block. And similar to dodge, you can have block that applies to spells, and you can have block that applies to attacks. And so these first two stages basically check to see if your character is going to be taking damage. And so the sort of third major stage that you can see in the next two bullet points is your character is going to be taking damage. What can you do to deal with that damage? And so PoE gives you the option of being able to convert the damage from one form into another, so you're able to mitigate it more effectively. And this is really why items such as Taste of Hate, Lightning Coil, Cloak of Flame are basically items that convert large physical hits to a partially elemental, partially physical hit, are really popular, because when you come to mitigate that damage, it's much more effective to mitigate some elemental and some physical that are two smaller components than a really large physical hit. And so the tools that we have to actually mitigate the damage are through physical tools and armor, endurance charges, basalt flasks. There's various items and tools to help you mitigate that physical damage, and then there's also tools to help mitigate elemental damages, and these come primarily in the form of resists. And so after that mitigation occurs, what happens is that the portion of that damage that you're actually going to take then after mitigation is first applied to any of the energy shield that you have. If you have Cloak of Defiance, if you have Mind Over Matter, anything that says that a percentage of the damage is going to be taken from Mana Before Life then hits after Energy Shield. And the final thing that happens is any amount of that remaining damage is then hit to your life total and is removed from there. And so if you're going to be planning a build, I've talked to seasoned players and looked back over characters that I've designed that I thought were highly successful, and one of the things that I noticed is that having a single strong defensive mechanic resulted in a better feeling character than having multiple weaker mechanics. So for example, having a lot of armor stacked up resulted in a better feeling character than having a little bit of evasion, a little bit of dodge, a little bit of armor. But that layered defenses really result in stronger, better feeling characters compared to a single strong defensive mechanic. And this is really why characters that have these layers feel really, really powerful. So for example, Aegis Aurora characters stack a lot of block chance as well as a lot of armor. And so not only do they have the way of avoiding damage that's associated with the hit when they block, but the damage that they know that they're not going to be able to block that actually gets through has a strong mitigation component, that high armor. And when you're planning your build, you want to account for the mechanics that you're using. Are they random or entropy based, such as dodge and block or evasion, as well as what happens when the stars align and damage does get through? What tools do I have to actually mitigate that damage? And so you want to make sure you have a plan when you're using those random or entropy based techniques for the times when hits and damage does come through. And third or fourth, you want to really look for things that synchronize well with one another on your items, the skills and things that you're going to be using. So for example, evasion is really powerful when coupled with enfeeble, which reduces an enemy's chance to actually hit you, as well as blind, which cuts an enemy's attack rating in half. And so like stacking these together make it so that it's harder and harder and harder for enemies to hit you because of their synergy. And so I'd encourage you to go seek out more the in-depth explanation of what exactly happens with these mechanics. And you can find this on the PoE wiki, and I've also created a more in-depth description of what's happening in each of these stages whenever PoE is processing it, and how can you deal with the damage in each of these stages. And also I'd encourage you to look back at builds that you've played, maybe it was a build guide that you followed or a character that you had, and try and understand exactly what it was that made that build feel so good. Good luck with your planning, and thanks for watching.